I want to thank Rich Fitzgerald, the county executive, Allegheny County executive, for being here. And I propose, and I'm going to digress slightly. We're in a situation. The president asked me to head up a cancer moonshot.
President Biden, just to be clear, would you or would you not rejoin the TPP? Yes or no?
I would not rejoin the TPP as it was initially put forward. In Guatemala, El Salvador, and to go in and say in Honduras and say, look, I know I'm called middle class, Joe. It's not meant as a compliment. It means I'm not sophisticated. Let it go. And there's an area where there's an important difference between this and area. There's an important difference between the candidates. I'm running. The country wasn't built by Wall Street bankers, CEOs, and hedge fund managers. This guy is moving to just foment hate. The price for whatever the drug costs are. Well, folks, eliminate one tax loophole out of $1.6 trillion worth, $1.4 trillion worth. Out of $1.4 billion. It's hard to even say it, it's so much. And by the way, it's cost a lot of money. It cost about $740 billion over 10 years. Now he's feeling the pressure of an economy that's teetering on a recession. And immediately changed the law in the state of Delaware protecting transgender people. My long friend, time friend, and she's a friend, she's been my friend in and out of public life, is among many qualified people. I'm the best qualified person for this job. Because think of what's been adopted. Milton Friedman's notion that the only obligation. But that all changed with our Republican friends in the late 80s when they adopted Milton Friedman's notion that the only obligation. We find ourselves in a position where you're in a circumstance where we've adopted Milton Friedman's notion, the conservative economist. Now, if in fact you are in a position, what was the case, you worked for Jimmy. That's why we're so special. It took courage. It took resilience. They know who we are. We have to let them know who we are. We can do it, and it's going to take billions of dollars to do it, and we can afford to do it. We can't afford not to do it. Cut in half the number of uninsured of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Cut in half. But President Trump and the demagogues around the world. But if Donald Trump is reelected, so people are figuring out there's not a damn thing we can do that we set our mind to that we can't get done. The single most stressed I was asked to speak to the American Psychiatric Association, to go over to the University of London and speak to the World Psychiatric Association. It's interesting. I just spoke to the International Society of Psychiatric, the International Organization of Psychiatrists, I forget the formal name of it, over in London because... this is not a Republican talking point. The Republicans are trying to kill Obamacare. Union workers, the UAW took incredible cuts in their future. That we have $1.6 trillion worth of loopholes in the law. But I never ever thought that I'd see what I saw in Charlotte. You know, I came home from law school. Avoid having an excuse to walk by the dealer and say, no, I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom. If we just were to reinstitute the CAFE standards. The fact is that the bills that the future president here, that the senator is talking about. And I was the one that suggested to the President Obama, I don't want to confuse presidents here. Look, we provide a Medicare option. That's exactly what Barack and I talked about in the beginning.
Couldn't get it through, though.
So I couldn't tell anybody but Barack. He's one of my closest friends. Invaded another country and annexed a significant portion of it called Crimea. Right. He's saying that it was my boss, it was his fault. We need to work again with Canada and Mexico as neighbors, not as adversaries. Donald Trump does pose an extra threat to this. It's not hypothetical. We can put every one of them in school, cutting in half the cost of a four-year education. Why they do that? I ran what they call the moonshot, dealing with cancer, and subsequently after that set up the Biden Cancer Initiative. And here's the point: the conservative columnist. And they'd say to you, take my shotgun. I said, I have 3. I now have 5 because my son died and I have 3 of his. I have 5 shotguns. So have a mechanism to control drug prices. You know, it's not, we're no longer using chemical-based things. All this thing we're dealing with, cancers and other issues relating to the immune system, are bio-oriented. Stop trying to keep your workers organized. By his failure to exercise any international leadership. It's about all these breakthroughs we have with dealing with the whole, immune system. The opportunities are amazing. We are in a position to be able to lead the world like we've never been able to do it before. I found that the secretary, we sat together in many meetings. There's things that are worth dealing with China tough on. What presidents say matter. High quality options. The public option will be available in my plan. We'll make sure it's not quality, we'll make sure it's only affordable. Quality that's affordable. Not the end in themselves. How can a person dignity be maintained? We choose truth over facts. You ever heard a president of the United States talk about law enforcement like he does today? I oversaw, as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee a long time, the FBI. Look what he talks about. But we lead by the example of our power, not just the power, not just the example of our power, but the example. We're out there, and it's what we say. Funding gap that exists between minority white and majority white and non-white districts. They're not national assets. That triumph of democracy and liberalism over fascism and autocracy. 1787, the United States Constitution. We don't always live up to, but that's who we are. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. You don't have here in Miami, in Florida. You don't have it here. That is, if you keep an audience. In terms of the Ku Klux Klan and white supremacy. I looked at it anyway. That's what I think my plan, I know what my plan does. Such as de-escalation studies have there have been de-escalation studies. The reason I did what I'm doing is because there's an invasion of Hispanics. $30 trillion. That makes it far more durable, reliable, and powerful. And partnerships built on coercion. And Lisa, you have been a great friend for a long time. And your Paul son is remarkable. You know, the next thing we got to do here along the line to report people's dignity, restore it. We're the most powerful military, not hyperbole, most powerful military in the history of the world. That's not hyperbole. Which we as a society talk about one another. The way we've always been. Look, things changed. You had over 40 kids shot in Kent State on a beautiful lawn by the National Guard. There are a whole lot of things, and guess what? We have to start rewarding work, not just wealth. The first speech stood up. The former chancellor of Germany stands up. She says, we have to go it alone. International leaders spoke about it. You had people like you had people like the former chairman and leader of the party in Germany. You had Angela Merkel stand up and say how terrible it was. We provide efficiency for appliances. That saves billions of gallons of gasoline. I mean, billions of $2.3 billion worth of, $500 billion in savings and 2-point-something billion metric tons of CO2 going in the air. Where an overwhelming number of families, ICE walks into a small Mississippi town, and in fact, arrests hundreds of workers. I was with a world leader in Indonesia who is a guy who is extremely well known and referred to as the Henry Kissinger of Asia. I was told when we were in office, demanding that HIV/AIDS be destigmatized and treated. And that's why we need to make post-secondary education affordable, available, and training, reducing the crushing cost of student loan debt. What's not to like about Vermont in terms of the beauty of it? And what a neat town. I mean, this is sort of a scenic, beautiful town. We can't afford it by just eliminating, beginning to treat work, reward work as much as wealth.
Mr. Biden, they say these gaps in your electability.
Well, that's what we determine pretty soon, won't it?
Thanks, guys.